Welcome to PeopleSoft Now. I'm Rebekah Jackson. It's a new fiscal year here at Oracle, so it's an ideal time to hear from Paco Aubrejuan, our Senior Vice President. We'll get his take on the capabilities we're delivering, how they're impacting you, our customers, and where the cloud fits in all of that. Let's jump in. It's been an exciting year, and we have a lot to catch up on. Paco, thanks so much for joining us.
Always happy to be here, Rebekah.
So you recently gave the PeopleSoft investment strategy update at the Reconnect Live conference in May, and it was our second time back at an in-person conference after the pandemic. What stood out to you this time?
I think the attendance and the energy. I mean, the first back in back to being in person conference we had was. People were still a little hesitant. I think we were just out of COVID or just not even out of COVID. And we didn't have the attendance. We didn't quite have the level of energy. But this year it was great. Lots of customers, lots of partners, lots of energy, lots of ideas. And the way that Quest organized the space was really nice. We were all together. It was in one space. It was PeopleSoft all the time. So it was a great conference.
I felt the same. I had a couple people comment to me that it was the best PeopleSoft event they can remember. And we're already looking forward to and planning for the virtual Reconnect in the fall.
Yeah, and I think it's good how we're doing the conference. Or Quest is doing the conferences now. The in-person one is just in person, so people come and we get all that in-person energy. And then the virtual one in the fall is lots of customers can attend because it's all virtual. So I think I think we've arrived at a good place there. It feels like.
I think so too. So circling back to the keynote that you presented, you really focused this time around on customers' success with PeopleSoft. Why did you choose that for a theme?
At the end of the day, everything that we do is so that our customers can be more successful, obviously, right? And so, whether that's the line of business success in terms of having PeopleSoft help them be more effective in whatever line of business they're in, whether it's helping get cost reduction and successfully reducing or controlling costs, or if you're on the PeopleSoft team at one of our customers, successfully implementing new features, successfully taking new image updates, successfully doing people tools patches and all that. So at the end of the day, what we do is entirely focused on our customer success. So it just follows and makes sense, I think, that we talk about what we're doing in the context of our customer success with those features, with those new releases. And so that's number one. It's just kind of really relevant. It makes everything very relevant if we can talk about how a customer has been successful with it. Number two is I think our customers are always asking us, is anyone else using this? Is anyone else, are there other customers still expanding their use of PeopleSoft? Are we alone effectively? And conferences are all about customers getting together. So I thought it would be a good time to really help leverage the investment that you and the rest of our team has made and our customers have made in the innovators program to really showcase what our customers are doing to our customers so that they realize that there's a very large ecosystem that's being very successful.
You mentioned expanding the use of PeopleSoft, and one of the things that we announced right before the conference and that you touched on in your presentation is the new aspect of the innovators program that recognizes those customers that are expanding their use of PeopleSoft in some fashion. And it made a pretty big splash at the event. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with the innovators program, it's a program we set up so that customers can understand what other customers are doing effectively. And customers or partners nominate a particular project where they've innovated with PeopleSoft, and we if it's accepted, we put that up on our website and we recognize them at the conference. We focus predominantly on kind of the functionality of PeopleSoft largely in the past. PeopleSoft innovators are using doing a number of things that we consider to be innovative, where we've made recent investments, and then feature innovators where there's a particular new feature that we want to highlight when customers start to adopt it. So that's what we've had before. With the expansion innovators, the thought was really there's a lot of investment that's happening on behalf of the customers in the PeopleSoft install base, whether that's expansion of using new products, whether that's expanding to new businesses, lines of business, or new geographies, or generally expanding the use of PeopleSoft. So why why not highlight those as well? Why not expose that information out to our customer base? So that's when you guys came up with the great idea of launching the Innovators program for expansion innovators. And it coincided with a pretty exciting news that the U.S. Army has just gone live with an additional 1 million or more than 1 million soldiers on PeopleSoft HCM. And so they were actually at the event. A number of the representatives and full regalia were there to accept the award and to accept the Innovators and talk a little bit about their program. So it's always exciting when a customer is recognizable and as large as the U.S. Army is expanding the use of PeopleSoft. I think it makes everyone realize that they've got good company.
Agreed. And you also talked about, in addition to the expansion of the way customers are using PeopleSoft, some of the features and capabilities that they're adopting. And you talked about the way that customers can be involved in the way we set our roadmap and the way we design our features. Why is that important?
Yeah, so in the past, how we decide what we do, and even kind of what features we invest in, what we decide to put on the roadmap, and even the process in which we then come up with the designs of these features has always been a little bit of a black box. And our goal is to have the most customers possible able to use an investment or feature that we build, to have it add value, and to do that as quickly as possible. So the two areas that we've really tried to bake customers into the kind of closed loop cycle that we have around kind of customer innovation and features. And the first part of that is making sure that we understand where the customer priorities are in terms of what those features are. And that's all about the ideas space. So ideas space or ideas labs are where our customers can go in, put in an idea for a feature they have. Other customers can see that, they can vote on it. We get the reports as we're doing our product planning and look at what are the requests effectively that have the most customer interest, and we do our best to put those onto the roadmap. We've delivered about almost 200 features in the last couple of years that have come in through the idea space, and 60% or so of the top ideas we deliver. So that's part of it, is making sure we really know what our customers want. We provide transparency to the process so that we're deciding to invest in the right things. And then the second part of it is, once we've decided to do it, how do we make sure that we hit the mark with this feature as we deliver it, right? So, and that's where our focus groups come in. And so we talked a lot about how we make the customer, how we get customer participation in the designs to review the requirements and the use cases and the roles of the people in our company that are going to be using it, review the designs and give us feedback. And by incorporating that feedback as part of the design process, we come out with a feature that's ready to go in the first version.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the number of focus groups that we have. When we documented and listed them all on our PeopleSoft information portal with instructions for how to join, it's really impressive to see that long list. And you used an example in your presentation of one area where, a feature where customers gave us input. They helped us to fine tune it, but I think also, so that the feature was right when we delivered it. But I think it's also having an impact on the way customers are adopting features.
Yeah.
Are we seeing that in terms of increased uptake?
Yeah, I mean, because these customers are able to influence how the feature is built, the design effectively, and what it does. That means number one, they have early visibility to it, so they don't have to wait until we deliver to understand it. And number two, their feedback has been incorporated, generally speaking. So one of the features that we covered, or that I talked about, was the benefit plan compare, which is in part of our benefits open enrollment. You can compare different benefit plans in a very configurable way. Kind of, feature that is something that everyone needs. We delivered that with the help of a very large focus group. They gave their input into that feature, and when we delivered it, one of the focus group members, Paul Getty Trust, implemented it within a couple of months, and basically gave us the feedback that because they'd been able to tell us before we delivered it where there were things that they needed that we hadn't put into the product, they were able to implement it much more quickly. So we have lots of examples like that. There's we have in analytics, we have Hennepin Healthcare, who's delivered. It's all about focusing on how do we get features adopted quickly. So a lot of our dashboards, they've adopted along with Lakeland College. Real-time analytics. We've had St. Paul Public Schools deploying these for search, and UC Berkeley for customer contracts. And so we talked a lot about the features that we've delivered recently, but we've talked about those features in the context of the customers that have adopted them and proven that they're adding value.
Because like you said, if we develop it, but customers don't adopt it, it doesn't
we
have
might as well have not done it at all, right? And we all know that we've done that in the past. I mean, there have been features in the past that we put out there that we had very few customers adopt, and that's unfortunate. So our goal is to really focus on the things that most customers need.
So speaking of features that get rapidly adopted, I was pretty excited when I did the innovators announcement this year that we've already had 3 customers recognized through the innovators program for adopting real-time indexing. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's so important?
Yeah, so we've, as most of our customers probably have seen, we've made lots of investments over the last probably 6 or 7 years or more in incorporating search, keyword search engine search into our applications. And we started with global search, but now we've incorporated that into what we call configurable search, so that you can use keywords like a keyword search to search for transactions on a component. But we're also using those indexes for our insights, our analytics, what we've called Kibana in the past, but the dashboards effectively. And so the challenge has been historically that the index data is only as current as the last time you ran the index or ran the incremental index. Real-time indexing keeps it exactly current. So as soon as the transaction hits the database, the index is updated. That makes the analytics much more relevant and trustworthy. It makes gives us the ability to use search in a lot of different places. So that and know that it's there, that the record you're going to search for is in the index because everything's in the index. And that changes the game in terms of what they can use search, what our customers can use search for, where they can deploy it, the confidence they have. And we've invested a lot in making sure that all of our indexes can be turned on to be real time, which means as soon as the transaction commits, it gets into the index. So, I really encourage our customers out there that are using search, which should be all of them, to make sure that you've looked at real time indexing, that you've turned that on everywhere, and so that your indexes are always up to date.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And we're seeing those stories coming in through the innovators program that customers are adopting. So another area that you focused on in your presentation was the area of reducing the cost of running PeopleSoft. And you talked about this in the context of 2 main areas, reducing invasive customization and then streamlining and automating operations. Maybe if we start with invasive customizations, what are we doing to drive out those areas of cost and those ways that it slows customers down in being able to be responsive with their applications? Yeah,
so we started a long time ago with trying to convince customers they didn't need to customize, and then realized that that's not very realistic. It's one of the valuable things about PeopleSoft is that customers can make it do whatever they want, and they're not going to get rid of them. So then we shifted our focus into trying to give them the ability to customize in a way that the system doesn't treat as a customization. And so there's a number of frameworks that we've delivered over the last few years, over the last number of years, that help do that. Page and field configurator is one of the key ones, which takes what can often be fairly tactical customizations, hiding fields, changing labels, things like that. Important but tactical but expensive in the long run, and allows you to move those into configurations. We have, if you want to change the UI, a lot of our pages now have drop zones on them, so you can do that. We have event mapping. Anyway, we have a number of these frameworks, and we've made a lot of investment to deliver these to customers. And we've seen actually quite a bit of success. I mean, the customers that have focused on it, City of Calgary is an example of one of the innovator customers who use page and field configurator, drop zones, event mapping, and App Engine plugins to eliminate a bunch of their customizations. Forbes Marshall retired 20-year-old. They went in and had 20-year-old customizations that they took out using some of the frameworks around the acknowledgement framework and file attachments and things like that. So we have a lot of customers. It requires an investment by the customers is to explicitly go and say, okay, we're going to, with a goal of reducing customizations, go in and analyze what we've done, and apply these frameworks to get to so that those customizations don't continue to cost us in terms of maintenance.
I did a little back of the napkin analysis, and I think more than 60% of the innovator submissions that I've seen in the last year or so had a decustomization component. But I'm curious, that's pretty good progress. But do you feel like we're entering a stage where, we're moving into the post-customization era where it's all configuration, and like the cloud? Or
yeah, I mean, I think so. So it depends on the customer. I think some customers still have a lot of value to gain from these frameworks. They haven't gotten, the job is never done. But at the end of the day, what I don't think that we can claim is that they can get, realistically, we'll get to a point of zero customizations. So then the question is, okay, what do we do? There's still going to be some customizations. How do we, and that's where most of the cost is in managing those customizations. So then the question becomes, how do we further reduce that cost? And that really brings the focus onto what the investments we've made in lifecycle management. In our PeopleSoft Update Manager framework, we've put a bunch of investments in over the last couple of releases and are continuing to now and in the next release to put in frameworks like our usage repository, which allows you to track which components and which processes and which pages in PeopleSoft you're actually using in production. Our PeopleSoft test framework repository, so it knows which tests you have, and the customization repository, so that you now know. So now PUM knows where have you customized, which objects have you customized, and by putting all those three together, you can now identify. Our customers can now identify, what are the components that are coming in that are customized that we don't have tests for. What are the areas that and what are the areas that we have tests for that we're not using, right? A whole bunch of optimization can be done. And then really in the last release or two, we've added a capability that we call three-way merge, which allows then our customers to, where they have customizations, when they've been able to test and validate that everything's gonna be okay, to do a three-way merge with what, the change that we're delivering, the baseline product and their customization, to bring that together so they don't have to go and reapply their customizations. So we can still move the ball forward on reducing the costs of those customizations that they can't just move to configuration. And we're going to continue to do that because, that's our goal, is reduce the cost. And that's one of the areas where there's costs.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable the benefit that can bring to customers, both in terms of reducing the real cost, but also unlocking that opportunity cost, so they don't have to keep their environment so static. Are there other areas in patching and maintenance that we're focused on as well?
So one of the areas that we've been looking at, that we put some work into and we're going to continue to invest in, and that is the deployment of these these PUM images, and how do you keep them up to date? We've already introduced automation that we call the automated updates that bring in PRPs, but what we're really now looking at is how do we leverage the investments that we've made in OCI and Cloud Manager so that customers never have to even think about installing an image again, that the system will manage the images. When there's a new one available, it'll automatically download it. It'll automatically move the metadata from the old image to the new image. And what we're working on in the future Cloud Manager is being able to then put all this links in place so that there's always a patched, most recent version of the patching image that's up and running, ready to use. So there's no logistics at all, and that's going to make things just a lot easier. Fewer moving parts, less work to do, less coordination. You don't need to know when things are happening; it's always there. So that's we have some customers doing that now. I expect to see more customers use that, even if they're not running their targets on OCI, even if they're in their own data centers. They can still use OCI and Cloud Manager to manage all their PUM instances.
So basically, we're moving, I think, into an era where, regardless of where you run your PeopleSoft applications, the most efficient way to patch them is from the PUM images running in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure.
Yeah, and we're gonna continue to invest to make that more and more automated.
Yeah, definitely a new area. It's exciting to see how things progress there. So that's a good segue into Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And I listened to a number of the stories that you highlighted at the conference, whether it's Cognizant with their 340,000 users running all in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or France's National Railway, SNCF, who won an award for zero carbon emissions through their use of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And then longtime customers like Hennepin County and King County and a number of others. It feels to me anecdotally like we are at a time when more customers are moving their PeopleSoft environments to OCI, and they're moving more quickly. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And a couple of years ago, I predicted that, within 5 years, more than 50% of our customers would be on OCI. And I think that's happening because, as we talked about, customer success leads to other customers paying attention and having success. And what, we've got, somewhere around 400 customers that are running PeopleSoft on OCI in one form or another. And that number is changing daily. We're past the early adopter, right? I mean, the early adopters of running PeopleSoft on OCI is maybe now a couple of years ago. We're in right in the adoption stage. And we have, I'm on a couple calls a week where customers are trying to understand, what our roadmaps are and what the investments are that we're making in running PeopleSoft on OCI. It's the cost advantages and the advantages around agility and responsiveness are just too significant for customers to not do this. And as they're coming up to hardware refresh cycles, almost all of them are moving to OCI. Even if they haven't standardized, even if the company or the organization that they're part of has standardized on a different cloud provider, they're still moving to OCI because of how much value that we've created with the cloud manager in terms of making PeopleSoft automated and even autonomous from a lifecycle management standpoint and operations management standpoint. It's pretty remarkable what we can do when we control through software the entire stack.
It's exciting for me to hear the real world stories and the real benefits that customers are getting. So we've talked about success on a lot of different dimensions, OCI, feature capabilities, the way that we're engaging with customers. How would you characterize what's enabling that success all these years later?
Well, I mean, there's a couple important parts of it. The kind of the fundamental part, at least from my perspective, is that Oracle has made a commitment back in, I guess, 2006 to around what we call Applications Unlimited, that we were going to continue to invest in the PeopleSoft products as long as our customers were running their businesses on there, to an indefinite period. We didn't have a plan to stop. That was a long time ago now. That was almost 20 years ago, right? Getting close to 20 years. So that underpins that commitment to continue to support our customers through the continued investment in PeopleSoft is really what makes all this possible. It's without that, none of this happens. Beyond that, I think, you have to look at our ecosystem and the customers and the partners and the PeopleSoft team all working together, right? I mean, that's really what's that was a PeopleSoft thing, from a long time ago, and it continues to be a thing that, that everyone's pitched in and working together.
Yeah, it's such a great community to be a part of. I feel very lucky. And I think our partnership with Quest in helping us engage with and support that community through the conferences and webinars and all
absolutely.
Of it.
Yeah.
So with so much success on PeopleSoft, does that mean that customers can plan to stay on PeopleSoft forever? Can they afford to defer thinking about the cloud?
I don't think so. I mean, we are operating under the assumption that all of our customers at some point will be on cloud applications. And we think, we feel very strongly that the model, the kind of software as a service model, cloud applications, if you will, is ultimately where this whole industry is going to go, and for very good reason, right? Our ability to innovate and deploy that at a cost that's much, much lower is fundamentally different, because the software company who builds the software is responsible for maintaining it, running it for our customers. So, the investment in PeopleSoft and the investment in Applications Unlimited is not intended for our customers to run PeopleSoft forever. The intention is to let customers decide when the right time is for them to move, and give them the support and investment in the products that they need to continue to be successful until that time comes. But really it is a bridge to the kind of the future, and the future we believe is the application, cloud applications, we hope, and hope that we've earned the right for that to be Oracle Cloud applications. But that we're really investing in our customers' future, and with the understanding that they have, they're going to have the flexibility, and it's their decision when they move, and we want to support them up until they do, and after they do. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And I'm particularly proud to work for a company that puts that decision in the hands of the customer.
Yeah. And I think if you talk to our PeopleSoft customers who've moved to the Oracle Cloud applications, they're happy. I mean, they're successful. There's a lot of them. They're in every industry and every geography and every size of customer, running all the different products. So we know that our PeopleSoft customers moving to the Oracle Cloud applications can be successful because we've got a lot of them that are. And so that's, and I talk to customers every day some of them are going to be on PeopleSoft for quite a while because of whatever reason, they have. A lot of them are in the middle of moving, and we kind of, wherever they are in that continuum, we're going to support them.
Excellent. Well, Paco, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thanks. It was good to be here. Thanks, Rebekah.
As always, Paco covered a lot of topics. If you need more information or want to continue the conversation with us in any of the areas we touched on, the Reconnect virtual event in October is a great place to do it. It's the perfect opportunity to go deep with our product team and, of course, hear from customers and partners about what they're doing with PeopleSoft. I look forward to seeing you there. Now, stay tuned for your In the Know update.
Good, Sparky.